students need to know how to work with scholarly sources. One important teaching technique we can use is to provide some direct instruction on what peer-reviewed research is and the value of scholarly sources. We can really dive deeply into the different elements or components of a research article so that students can understand the nature and the purpose of each section. Providing students with tips on how to read these resources are also important. For instance, many of them think that they need to start at the beginning and move all the way until they get to the end. But in actuality, we know that zooming in on key parts of the article is going to be much more effective and efficient. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about peer-reviewed research and how peer-reviewed research is broken down into different sections so that you, as a college student, can start to attack these more college scholarly type sources and can get comfortable doing so. So the first thing we need to do is we need to talk about what is peer-reviewed research. Well, it is work that has been done by professionals. So many times it's PhD level folks who are writing about either theoretical pieces or research articles. And it's often original research, although it can sometimes be a summary of research. What we're going to zoom in on today is the research articles and help you analyze and understand the different components of it. So before we do so, let's talk a little bit about how does someone get something published in a peer-reviewed journal. So here's what happens. You actually get authors writing, they're doing research mostly at college settings, and then what they do is they take this research, they write it up, and they submit it for publication. After they submit it for publication, it is reviewed anonymously by their professional peers. So basically they hand it over, it's sent out anonymously to at least usually 3 different professionals who then critique it and decide whether or not it's worthy of publication. Now sometimes they'll say yes it is, that's usually rare for them to say yes immediately. Oftentimes they'll say yes but, and they'll give you some things that you need to do in order to make it ready for publication. And sometimes they'll flat out say no, I'm sorry, this doesn't meet the caliber of what we're expecting in our journal. So this is the process that happens, and that way you can know that if you're looking at something in a peer-reviewed journal, that this is really very valuable and that this is something that has already been accepted, so to speak, by the professional world. So it's very different than looking at Google and not knowing whether or not this website is providing you with valuable information. All right, so let's talk about the different components. So there's the abstract, the introduction, the method, the results, and the discussion follows. We'll zoom in on each one. While we're doing this, I'd like you to take a look at the article that you have in front of you as a model, and this article is on the effectiveness of a freshman seminar course. So I'd like you to take a look at this article, and the abstract is always going to be the very first paragraph. Sometimes it's 2 paragraphs of the article. In this particular case, you can see it's in italics. And what the point of the abstract is to provide you with a very brief summary. So what I'd like you to do now is to kind of mark down that that's the abstract in the article, and then I'd like to have you take a few minutes to read the abstract, and then I want you to tell me what you think this article is about. So take a few minutes now to read it. Would anyone like to take a stab at what they think this article is all about? Okay, Vanessa?
It's about how when you're starting college and you go to a freshman seminar, they tell you what to expect, how to study for classes, and try to help you, guide you around the school before you start so that you can have more confidence when you start school, and then hopefully that will help you during your studies so that you have the resources that the school offers.
Okay, so as Vanessa pointed out, this article is all about this freshman seminar course that's going to help students get oriented to the campus. Would anyone else like to add anything else about the article? Taylor?
It also helps, they help you choose the path that you want as far as in the future, and helps you plan out if you're confused on what you really want to do.
Okay, so it seems like you're already jumping into, you see some of the results of the study here, right? That there is some effectiveness. Basically, you can get a sense from this paragraph that the authors have found that this course is effective at helping students out, right? Anyone else want to add something? Candace?
They helped you find the resources around campus.
Okay, so the freshman seminar class also helps you connect to campus resources. Great. So you see how by just reading this one paragraph, which I know has a lot of jargon in it, I mean it's written for the professional audience, you need to keep that in mind. But as you look at it, I want you to focus on, well, what's this about? And what were they really kind of focused on and finding here? Now, when we zoom into the rest of the article, we'll go into the introduction, which is going to tell you why this research was really done. So the introduction actually in this article doesn't have a label, but it begins right after the abstract. So mark that down, and I'll tell you a little bit about what happens here. Here the author is going to provide you with background information. Chances are this isn't the first person who ever did a research study on the freshman seminar course, right? So they need to put their study in the context of what we already know. And then they're going to talk about why they need to do this study, what it's going to add to our knowledge base. So that's what they'll do here, and what their hypothesis is. Whether they expect that the freshman seminar class is going to have productive outcomes, and if so, what type of outcomes. So that's what happens there. The next section is the method. So flip over to the next page. Actually, it's on page 37 on the top. And you see this one is clearly articulated here, and it has method listed. There are two big things that happen in this area. One is they're telling you who participated. You see the section called participants. Why do you think it would be important for us to know who participated in the study? What do you think, Kristen?
Because it's not a large enough group, it can't really be used.
Okay, so right. I mean, we would have very different feelings about the study and interpretations of the study if there's one person in it versus if there's 500 people or 10,000 people in the study, right? Why else do you think it's important to know about who? Brittany?
Like the age range.
Okay, so why would that be important, Brittany?
Because if it's like has to do like with like people who are freshmen, then like we can relate. People who are freshmen can relate to them.
Sure, sure. I mean, if you're looking at a freshman orientation class, we want to make sure that we're asking freshmen. You know, you could also ask faculty about what they think about it, but that's going to give you a very different outcome than asking the freshmen themselves, right? So the who is an important part of it, and will help us critically evaluate how meaningful the data will be to us. The other piece is the procedure. And basically the procedure means how did they do the study? What did they ask the participants to do? So this gives you information about what they were collecting. So for instance, if they wanted to know whether or not it had a good outcome with academic performance, they might do that by asking students, so how did you do this semester? Now, you might be able to give an accurate answer, but if I went actually to their GPA, I'd have a very specific, concrete, direct kind of answer about that. So you would want to know, are they asking opinion-based questions? Are they asking actual performance markers like GPA, retention, things of that nature? And that will, again, will give you a better way, better lens in which to view the results that we'll be looking at next. All right, now we'll go ahead and move over to the results section, and you can see that's actually at the bottom of page 37. And here, what they're going to do is they're going to tell you what did they find. So, did the freshman seminar class help? And if so, how much? And in what way? Now, you'll see the results gets a little technical because there's a lot of statistical language in there, and they also will have charts. Like if you flip over to the next page, you'll see a chart. There's an example on the board as well. And basically what that does is it provides, visual context for the information. You'll see that capital letter M. Does anyone know what that means in statistical lingo? Mean or average. So now if you didn't have statistics before, you may not know that, but basically that means average. So you don't need to be a statistician to break this apart, but you do need to have a little bit of knowledge to know what are you looking at in this chart. So you're looking at the averages between the different areas here. Pre-test, post-test, etc. But the last section is the discussion. And the discussion is really a great section because what it does is it takes the results, it puts them all into words. So for those of you who are not fans of math, you don't have to stress out anymore because it's all in words again for you. And they also put it in the context of what we already knew and how it adds to our knowledge base. So this is a really great way to start reading the articles. In fact, that's what we're going to talk about next, strategies to read journal articles. And they will also talk about any limitations of the study so that you're not interpreting the results inaccurately. You need to make sure you're interpreting them within the context of how the study was conducted. So here's just a brief summary, and we'll be using this a little bit later on in another activity to break down articles, but it basically zooms you in on what is the most important part, what are they trying to accomplish in all of the areas of the research study and article. So let's take one moment now to take a look about how you would read journal articles. Let's start for a moment talking about a textbook. When you're given a textbook, what do you do first? How do you attack that in reading it? Vanessa?
Well, it depends on what kind of textbook it is. Like I'm a bio major, so I look through what the teacher wants us to know, and then I kind of scan for that first.
Okay. So if you're going to kind of do some scanning. Do you usually start on page 1 of the chapter and then scan forward? Okay, so most of us, we want to use textbooks as resources, but most of us will go kind of in a chronological order, starting at the beginning and move towards the end, right? In a research article, that's not the best strategy. And here's why. What I want you to do is I want you to look at the abstract, and I want you to read that several times before you move on. Why? It provides you that overview and that summary of what the entire article is about. So you read that several times, and once you have a sense of that, then you move on. Then you're going to move on to the introduction, which sets the stage for the article. Again, that provides you background. It tends to be an easier part of the article to read. After you're done with the introduction, then you're going to skip the method and the results and go all the way to the end to the discussion. Why do you think I'm having you do that? Anyone have any ideas about why we might move to discussion? Candace?
So we don't confuse ourselves with all the extremely technical terms.
It really will help you zoom in on the easier parts of the article to provide context so that when you go and tackle those more challenging parts, which certainly are the method and the results sections, you'll be more well equipped to be able to handle that information because, again, you've given yourself a context. So this is a better strategy for reading journal articles. Start with the abstract, go from the intro, skip all the way to the end to the discussion, and then go back and read it all through. Okay, so hopefully you'll find those techniques to be helpful to you.